I started out in stereo in 1971. I was coming off a very nasty divorce, and I like a lot of young guys, moved back home. My parents said, you can come home for a couple of months and get your life together. I was home for about 8 months. And in that time, my father, mom, all the kids were gone, of course. And my dad had what we called the Fibber McGee closet. If you're old enough to remember Fibber McGee and Molly, it was a closet that they'd open and all the crap would fall on the floor. So my dad had one of these closets. So all through the year, he would fill it up with all kinds of stuff. And then he'd have to, my mom would say, you need to clean out the Fibber McGee closet. So there was a project, usually about this time of year. So I came home, I was living there at home, and he said, John, we're going to clean out the Fibber McGee closet. Do you want to help me? I said, sure, Dad. So my brother at that time was going to the Miami, Ohio University, and my parents were going down there about once a month to visit. And my dad was a chronic collector. I got in my blood from him, and he would collect everything. And I grew up collecting everything too. So unbeknownst to me, he had purchased a stereoscope and a handful of views at an antique shop down in Oxford, Ohio, and had planned to sort of collect these, but he never really got very far with it. He had other interests. So going through the closet, I stumbled onto the stereoscope and the box of views, and I said, what's this thing? He says, well, this is a stereoscope. I said, what's it do? He said, well, you look at these pictures, you look in there, and why don't you take a look at it? I took like, well, it was a view of, it was one of those Sears Roebuck views of the catalog place in Chicago, the Sears set. Oh, blew me away. I said, oh my gosh, this is incredible. I said, it's like you're right there. He says, yeah. I says, there's more of those. Look at all of them. I says, okay. So he had like 30 views. I said, where do you get these? He says, well, you buy them at antique shops, and you find them at antique shows. And I said, okay, I think I might be interested in this. He said, well, take the viewer. He says, just take the viewer, have fun with it, do whatever you want. Well, did he know? So about a week later, there was an antique show in Columbus. And I saw it advertised, well, I'm going to go to that show and see what that kind of Stereoviews. So I walk up to the first row, and there's a guy there, and he had a stack of views, and I said, how much are these? He said, well, they're all priced individually. He says, the color ones are 50 cents, and the black and white ones are a quarter. Now, my grandfather was an internationally known stamp collector and dealer. He sold stamps, and major stamp guy. And very well known in the stamp area, philatelic area. He always told me, when you collect anything, you collect the very best of whatever you find. So then I could hear his voice in my head, and he said, well, that means that the colored ones, those are the best ones. So, of course, they were all the color lithographic views, which are the least valuable views in the world of collecting. So I bought $4 worth, I had 8 views, and oh man, these are phenomenal. One view that really struck me was the view of the 2 soldiers at West Point with the American flag and the Army flag. This is just unbelievable. So I took them home, showed my dad. He was really impressed with them. And so then about a week later, I'm looking at my 40 views or whatever I had now, 38 views. And I'm thinking, man, I got to find out more about this. I don't know anything about this stuff. I said, if I'm going to go to the library, and I was working at that time. I had a job in Columbus, and so on my lunch hour, downtown Columbus, went to the library. I go to the library, and I look at the card calendar. My gosh, there's a book about Stereoviews by William C. Darragh. It's in the library. It's in the reference departments. Or no, it wasn't the reference. It was in the regular settings. So I go down there and get the book. I bring it home. I checked it out. I didn't have time. I had to get back to my lunch time. I had to get back to work. I took the book and threw it in my briefcase. So that night I got home, and I read the first couple pages, and I said, no, I'm too tired. I can't deal with this. I'll put this aside. So I put the book aside, and then the following weekend there was my mom says, it looks in the paper here, there's a new antique shop just opened up out of town called Hilliard, which is near Columbus. Says, why don't we go out there and take a look at what the guy has? I said, okay. So we go out there, and he's from Philadelphia, and he has a little shop in the back of his little house. And I gotta go to the back where you climb over some stuff, get in there, and I said, you have any stereo cards? No, yeah. He says, there's 2 boxes. He says, the colored ones are 25 cents, and the black and white ones are 10 cents. Man! half price. So I start looking through the colored ones, and I was pretty impressed. And 3 or 4 out, and I happened to look over at the black ornaments, and they just looked different than the ones I saw at the antique shop. They were kind of on this ivory colored mounts, and they were different. And the pictures were different. They really did look old. And I thought, they're only 10 cents. I said, let me look at those. So I looked at them. Well, on the end of the views, they had this funny imprint. It said Langenheim on them. And I thought, Langenheim, that's a strange name. And I looked at it. It was views of Washington, D.C., New York City, and Philadelphia. And, I want those. Those aren't good. I'm buying the colored ones. So I bought the colored ones. I come home. That night, it was a Saturday night, I look at the book. Get the book out again. Look up my views. Here's what I got. I'm looking through them. The next chapter after the introduction is the pioneer photographers. Starts out, says, William and Frederick Langenheim made the first commercial American Stereoviews in 1854. Blah, 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 blah. Holy carambas. So I flipped over to the little price guide in the back. Now this book was written in 1964, and this is like 1971. So I flipped to the back of the book and it says Langenheim regular paper views. They're like $25, $45. And I went, holy crap. So I couldn't sleep all night. I was thinking about those views in that box. So I got up early in the morning, Sunday morning, drove out to Hilliard, get to this guy's house about 8 o'clock in the morning, rapping on the back door, and he comes in, what is it? I said, I'm the guy that looked at those Stereoviews. And the other day, he said, yeah, what about them? I said, well, I want to buy the 10-cent ones. He says, you want to buy the 10-cent ones? You woke me up to buy the 10-cent ones. And I said, yeah. I said, I want to buy those. He said, okay, come on in. So there was like 10 Langenheim views in there. 10 for $1. Cost me a buck. So I got home and I looked at them. They're unbelievable views. Now I'm totally crazy hooked on stereo. And I will have to say, in the years since then, since 1971, so to this day, I've yet to find a nicer group of Langenheim views in an antique shop, ever. You go to any of the NSA conventions, nobody has 10 Langenheim views for sale all at one time. Nobody. I mean, at any price. I don't care what price you put on. That's how rare those views were. And I just was dumb luck. I was destined to do this nonsense. So anyway, so that's how I got started collecting. I'm going to show you some slides that they're on RVT Mouse to show you some things from our collection. I have remarried. I have a lovely wife, and as my life has moved on. But I did learn an awful lot, and I've studied this stuff I studied it from top to bottom. I've done a tremendous amount of research on stereo, and we're not going to show the slides until you. Okay, I'm not going to show the slide. As I said, in 1854 was the first American Stereoviews, but actually stereo photography started in 1838-39. In 1838, a man named Charles Wheatstone, who was a mathematician and physicist and pretty much a genius in England, Sir Charles Wheatstone, he had already established himself. He established we call them math tables. That was something that was a big thing to be able to do, the math tables. And he developed the different math tables that we still have in textbooks today. And he got interested in optics, and he figured out through his readings that various people like Leonardo da Vinci and other people had already figured out that the right eye and the left eye see slightly different images. And he wanted to try to reproduce, be able to look at an object that's reproduced in some way. This is before photography. Now, photography doesn't come until 1839, so this is a year before photography. And he created what he called a stereoscope, which had 2 images, a left and a right. And he worked from drawing. He did drawings. He would just draw what the right eye would see, and then he would draw what the left eye would see, and then that would be his pair. And then he used mirrors instead of the binocular method that we use today. And he got a 3-dimensional image. So he did a paper on it. He did a presentation to the British Royal Society, and they were very impressed with it. And he created the word stereoscope, and he created the word stereograph to describe the images that we have, which is from the Greek meaning that it's solid, it has shape. And In 1839, as many of you may know, Daguerre came up with the daguerreotype, and at the same time Talbot, who is in England, who happened to know Sir Charles Wheatstone, he also came up with what we call the negative-positive process. That's what we now know as most photography is a negative-positive process. It's almost concurrent. So there's always been a controversy about who was first, the French or the English. But really, Daguerre was first because he was working on it for a long time. What happened was Wheatstone contacted Talbot, and Talbot was able to make a stereo photographic image, and those were done in 1839. The first American, let's just say, that was in 1839. What happened then was that it was a difficult process. Photography is a difficult process just to make one image. To make two images is almost impossible at this time, in 1839, 1840. So it took a while for the various people involved in this to create an image that would work properly. But they played around with it, and there are some known, sorely badly made stereo images from the 1840s. And in 1849, 1850, we don't know exactly when, Sir David Brewster, another Englishman, who was already well known because he invented the kaleidoscope, which you may even know what a kaleidoscope is. And he invented the kaleidoscope, and he was a favorite of Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria loved this guy. I thought he was because she loved any visual item. She loved unusual things. And you have to understand, Queen Victoria at that time was the most popular personality in the world at that time. So whatever Queen Victoria did, everybody did. If she bought a green hat, everybody bought a green hat. It was she set the tone. What was worn, what was said, everything. So in 1851, her husband, the consort, Prince Albert, decided he was going, it's actually in 1850, in 1851 he had the International Exposition, which was at the Crystal Palace in London. They built this incredible building out of glass and steel, the Crystal Palace building, and they invited the world's scientists, industries, everybody to bring your stuff and exhibit the world in one place. It was a phenomenal exhibit. It was the first World's Fair, all inside. And Sir David Brewster had a booth. He had a place to sell his kaleidoscopes. And he had been playing around with a binocular stereoscope. I'll take this. I can't do this with. I can talk pretty loud. This is a booster viewer. This is an American-made booster viewer. It's burled maple, very rare wood. And this viewer dates from about 1855. It's the earliest viewer I had. It's the original booster viewer was for stereo daguerreotypes and for glass images. In here is a glass image, stereo image of the Crystal Palace. Okay? I don't want anybody to pick this up because it's so fragile. Okay, if you want to see it, I'll make it come up individually. Don't just come pick it up because I did this talk at a high school a number of years ago, and one kid picked it up and he cracked the cover glass on my view. So I don't want to, but it's such an impressive view. You get to see actually what the Crystal Palace looked like in 3D. Okay, these curly views. He invented this viewer. He called it the binocular stereoscope, and he introduced it at 1851 Crystal Palace. Then Victoria comes through, and she says, "Sir David, what do you have these days?" Always had an unusual kaleidoscope, some kind of optical toy. Can you all hear me? Okay, he always had an optical toy, something interesting to show her. He said, "My Majesty, look at this. It's called a binocular stereoscope. And you look at an image in here, and you see a green image." And she said, so she looks at it, she's blown away. We're all blown away the first time we see it, right? She looks at it, and immediately goes back. She says to Sir David, "Order me 20 of these. I want them for all the people in my court." And he says, "Okay." Well, he didn't really have any manufacturers set up, but quickly got a company in France and making stereoscope. That night in the London Times, says, Queen Victoria visits the exposition, purchases new optical toy called the stereoscope. You can purchase these stereoscopes for Sir David Brewster, student himself. right? So this holy cannoli, he's got people calling, coming to see him, say, well, we want one of those. The Queen has one. Well, we're going to make them. Well, what happened within a year? Within a year, they had made almost 100,000 stereoscopes. I can hardly believe that figure. It's in all the books. It's documented. They actually made and sold and these are so darn rare, but they actually made them, and they became a huge, huge, huge success. This was an international exposition. We had the people from Turkey, the people from Japan, and people from all over the world at this exposition. They're taking these home with it. And they're taking home the Stereoviews, and the photographers, this was a boom, they suddenly start creating. Now you have this, it's like having a DVD player, now you need the DVDs. So now everybody's wanting, so we now have an industry created almost entirely overnight, centered in England. And that's in 1851, 1852. Well, the Langenheim brothers, Frederick and William Langenheim, they visit England, and they're going to go see Talbot about purchasing the American rights to the negative-positive process. And at that point, he's making what are called saw points of his image. So they go to see him, and he says, "Have you seen the Worcester stereoscope?" He said, "No, where to go? You have to see them." So they went to see Worcester. They find out by this time there's a new company has been found called the London Stereoscopic, and they actually have a store in London, and all they're selling are stereoscopes and stereoviews. It's a stereoscopic emporium. This is a huge business, overnight business. And the demand is greater than the supply. So they come back, they purchase a stereoscopic outfit, they come back to Philadelphia, and they set up a business to make stereoscopic views. That's the first commercial American views are first issued in the spring of 1854. And that's, everything ends, and then from then on, it takes off, because the American public, anything like this, it's perfect timing for a product of this type. So, Worcester viewers, in 1854, 1855, this is an American viewer. I don't know who manufactured it, but it's following me, so I take him at his word. Probably was the greatest viewer collector of all time. Well, what happened was, almost anybody of any stature, doctors, lawyers, politicians, anybody knew any of got interested in it. Some even became amateur stereophotographers very early. Well, one of the people that got very interested in it is Dr. Oliver Wendell Holmes. Dr. Oliver Wendell Holmes is not the man who was on the Supreme Court. That's his son. So Dr. Oliver Wendell Holmes of Cambridge, Massachusetts, and he was a genius. Okay, he knew everybody, and he knew a lot about everything. And he would visit. He knew Emerson. He knew Hawthorne. He knew all these people we hear about. And he got fascinated with the whole thing, stereoscopic views. And he felt that everybody should have a stereoscope that they could have at home. Everybody should be experienced. There should be libraries of stereoscopic views. He had great visions for what would be happening. So he started playing around, and he invented what's called the skeleton stereoscope. Now this viewer we have here, without the slider, this is very close to his original design. His original design is still in existence. It's in up in Exeter, New Hampshire, and the viewer is made out of cigar box wood, and it's very primitive. It has a pair of lenses, and one thing about the lenses that you may not realize, these lenses are cut from one single lens. This pair is cut from one single lens. So you can't take a lens from another viewer and replace it by your lens. You have to replace the pair. Okay? But you're not going to get, because the optical distances back then, everything was different. And we just not precise at all. And so he got a lens, big lens. He cut it to the size. He made this design. Put a box around here. He put grooves in here. He put little slots. Put the view in, and that was his viewer. Took the viewer around to various people, and he said, anybody with manufacturing can have this. I'm not going to patent it. Anybody with make it can have it.
Well, no, everyone wants to lose. Tell him that Joseph Bates. Joseph Bates was an optical man in Boston, and was doing a little business in Stereoviews and stereoscopes. And I think there's possibilities with this, but I think I can make some improvements on it. Let's make the hood more shaped. Let's also take and put a slider on here, and we can put the view in there, and then you can focus it instead of having the slides. And okay, if you want to do it, it's yours. Promote it, sell it, and you would. And Joseph Bates made the first stereoscope, just now called the home stereoscope. That's what this is a home-based stereoscope. If you notice, it's not a stereopticon. A stereopticon is totally unrelated option. Okay? Stereopticon is actually a lantern slide. And how it got its name is that the Langenheim brothers in Philadelphia were the first ones to introduce the lantern slide projector and slide. They were already the leading maker of stereoviews in the United States, stereographs. So they played on that word. It has nothing to do with 3D. And he called it a stereopticon. That is a lantern slide projector, the single lens projector. And he used halves of his stereo glass images for the lantern projector built on a wall or a screen. So that's a misuse of the word. Don't use it. I get creepy crawly every time somebody says stereo. Okay. So that's the beginning of stereo. It grew, became a huge business. By 1860, 61, we start the American Civil War. So the American Civil War, first major event photographed. First major event. There's other events, but this is the first major event. Nearly all of the photographs, nearly all exterior photographs that you see, many of the portraits that you see reproduced in school books, PBS, and all these shows about the Civil War are half of stereo. Nearly all of them. Okay? Now, many of the stereo photographers also carry a full plate camera and they side by side. Stereo over here, and then step over, and I have another camera here to make another. So those are also, they did that. But the big business, the vast majority of stereo images are photographed images, other than portraits, are from half of stereo. I think most people have no idea. Matthew Brady did not take part in any of the images. Okay, that's another fable. Created by myself. Matthew Brady was probably the leading photographer. By 1860, he was the most famous photographer in the United States at that time. And he had a studio in New York City, and he opened up a smaller, branch studio in Washington, D.C. And the largest supplier of materials and cameras in the industry were the D&H Management Company. It was actually Edward Anthony. So Henry came in. So in New York City, they were creating the most stereo views. They were also creating cameras and viewers. If you went to their emporium, Broadway, you could see a lavish display of all of their stuff. And in 1861, he goes to see them, knowing that war is going to happen. There's going to be a problem. It's already had started. He says, I'm going to document this war. I'm going to hire photographers to go into the field and photograph this. I don't know how this long is going to last, but I think this is real money. Edward Anthony agreed with him with the condition we would supply all the cameras and all the glass negative materials, making all on glass negatives, to go into the field in return for the rights to all the stereoscopic photographic. Guess who made out with that? Edward Anthony made an fortune. Built that business from nothing after a huge business during the Civil War, selling stereoviews of war supplied by Brady. Brady could never pay him back. Never paid him back. He just never made enough money to sell. He thought he was going to be able to sell images to the publishers like Harper's Weekly, Leslie's Mag. Those publications sent their own sketch artists out in the field. They didn't need to photograph it. So as a result, he didn't realize the money that he thought he was going to realize. As a result, he couldn't pay the photography. By 1863, nearly all the photographers that did working for him left and went with Alexander Gardner. Alexander Gardner is the leading hand, not the man who created. And Alexander Gardner was smart enough to spirit away Timothy O'Sullivan, who was the best stereophotographer who bought it later on. Timothy O'Sullivan later, after the Civil War, became famous for the computer survey, which was a Western photograph. There many, many books on O'Sullivan on art. So that's part of the story. So at the end of the Civil War, the country came back into normalcy, and we now have another great revival, more interest. And as I said before, the stereo views were done on glass negatives. This is an original negative. This is actually a copy negative. And the business got to be such a huge business that they started to copy other people's work, sell the views. And one of the biggest early copiers was a man named William Chase. Now, William Chase was in Baltimore, and he set up a huge copy house. And he would go out and he would put the stereo views, and he'd copy them, and then he would have the negative, and he'd print as many as he wanted. This is the original view, made in Columbus, Ohio. Chase never came to Columbus. He had somebody buy this one. It's by H. Kilton, photographer in Columbus, Ohio, 1870. This is the copy view, this name view. This is the original copy negative. Came from the Chase estate. I actually have two. He actually, because it was such a huge business, they would make as many as 10 or 12 copies at a time. So they could make 10 or 12 prints here at a time, published. So this is the same exact image, reproduced twice, copied. And when they would make these, they would print these by light, by sunlight. There was no electric light. They would take a pen in a dark room, they would lay the glass negative onto sensitized paper, which was called albumin paper, made from base ink whites. That's where the word albumin comes from. And they lay these out, flip the door open upstairs in the studio, or the north, we call the north light, and they shove this frame out into the light, out for a few seconds, pull it back in, shove the thing back to the darkness, and you have the red light there for the for them to be able to barely see it. Second or third floor, or fourth floor of the building must have been kind of hot because people would work under those conditions. And then they would print that sheet and finish it off, and then they cut them to size and they mount them on card mounts. So it was a huge business, and that's the way all the stereophotographers work. Their own original negatives, and then of course the copying it. By 1873, the copy business was causing such a furor in the business, it was also a financial collapse at that time, that the photographers, the stereophotographers, demanded that the United States government do something about all the copying. It's just like copying VHS does. That's the word put out. And they created, the United States government created U.S. copyright office just because of stereography. And everybody jumped on board that, and by 1876, they had a U.S. copyright office. And it's mainly because of the copy stereographs that large business. Also in that time, they also made a lot of different kinds of viewers. And this is what's called a stereographic. This viewer collapses down into itself. This is a very blunt viewer. It collapses down into itself, like this. Okay, and you put on the parlor table. And then when you're ready to look at the views, you open it up, and you would set it up like this, and get it tight up that you would sit in a chair at the table, adjust it, and then you can look at regular photographs, like this, or you could put a stereo image in an archival sleeve into a slot there, and then by focusing this, you could focus this up closer to you so you can see it in 3D. So it acted as both a magnifying glass viewer at the top for regular images or as a stereo viewer. That's called a stereographic scope. They manufactured these from about 1870 up to about 1900 or so. They were still selling. But the most popular viewer is the home stereoscope, and they made millions and millions of these. By the 1890, they were down to 25 cents a piece. Basically, it was sort of like the Polaroid cameras in a way, because they want you to buy the viewer. The views would cost as much as 50 cents. In 1900, Keystone sold the views for 50 cents a piece, and the viewers for 25 cents. So the money was in the views, not in the viewers. They wanted you to have a viewer. They knew they were only going to sell you one or two viewers, but they wanted to sell you hundreds of viewers. So that's the way it was. Now, by 1900, the business had gotten less and less because we have other media coming. We have printed books and other media that was being made at the time. So the stereo business started to slag off. It had a revival, major revival at the time of Theodore Roosevelt. Kind of went with the economic times. By the time of World War I in 1914, it had got to the point there was only about a half a dozen major publishers of stereoviews. They were still selling stereoscopes. Someone asked me earlier tonight, when did they stop making stereoviews? Well, they actually never have stopped making stereoviews, but the last part-mounted views were made in 1964. It's unbelievable. There's some oddball companies that started up. One of my favorites is the Horoscope Company. Horoscope Company is in Cleveland, Ohio. They started in 1914, and they made this unusual viewer. It's made out of aluminum, which at the time was a fairly new material, lightweight material. And it was fairly expensive. And this viewer folds itself up, and you're able to put yourself the stereoscope, fold it up. Came in a box like this, and the company went after the major corporations and businesses in the United States, and it was not really sold to the general public. The idea behind this project was to get companies to have a photographer come to their factory, photograph their factory, so the customers would be shown these views like in the stores or from a salesman would know that they really were in business. But at the time, in 1914, they were having a problem, especially in the automobile business here in Detroit. Some of you already know. Prior to that time, from 1905, 1906 up until this time, anybody could build a car, it seemed like. And they sold car parts, people, you buy bumpers here, you buy frames here, you buy tires here, and you build a car. And then you would drop these, they were kind of like fly-by-night auto companies. They would make the logo for the front of the car, and they'd ride into some little town, and they give the mayor, who's the mayor, well, he's over here, give the mayor a ride around the circle in the car, and so you can buy this car for $250 delivered right here to town. We'll have it here in about 3 to 4 weeks. Where do I sign? Well, the car never showed. There never was a fact. It was only one. So that was one of many industries that worked that way. So this idea appealed to the automobile manufacturers. Hudson, Packard, Cadillac, Chalmers, all these major companies were making cars thought this was a great idea, and they nearly all of them have the stereoscope set. They're very, very rare sets. I have one set that's for sale, and I'm going to sell it to let you know this is a set, and this is the Standard Tool Company, Cleveland, Ohio, and they're making machine tools. That company is still in business today. So that was done about 1915. And they all came in this little box like this, and the viewer folds up together. Another view that you will see occasionally are called tissue views. These are fold-alike views. They were made from about 1858 until actually they're still making some in the 1890s. But this dates from about 1860. They were hand-colored from behind, and this is a studio pose. A lot of them were done in England, and they were done studio posed. And this particular one actually is from France, and it shows an artist's studio, and it's very, very detailed. You're welcome to take a look at it. I ask that you not take things out of the sleeves. Also, I'm asking you not to pick this up. I'll be glad to show it to you. There were various kinds of mounts. They did It's the regular standard, kind of standard mounts and early views with the yellow mount. You have the cabinet-sized mounts. These came out in the 1870s, were popular into the 1880s. And then we have what are called the curved mounts. And think about the curved mounts. These are not good. These are curved. Do not try to flatten them out. I've had people flatten them out and ruin them. They, there's actually a museum now, the Keystone, it's actually the Johnson Shaw Stereoscopic Museum. It's in Meadville, Pennsylvania, not that too far away from me, about 5 hours from here. And it's in the museum, they actually have the original warping.
Where were they curved?
They were curved for two reasons. One, the idea was thought up by Benjamin Kilburn, and in the mid to the early 1880s, what the idea was, in the factory, they found it was easier to stack the views up, so they were trying to sell sets of views. That's one reason. The other reason was, on this glossy silver photographic print, you don't get as much glare when you have 3D. It doesn't really enhance the 3D, and 3D is always going to be there. But when you go to a flat image, you're going to get more glare when you look at it in the viewer. Those are the two major reasons that they come up with, yes.
And the third one that was selling me a lot of these sculptures, you put that face down.
That's another, you're absolutely right. That is another theory. We aren't 100% sure because there's so little literature, but the Johnson Shaw Stereoscopic Museum, they come to the conclusion in their research that it's stacking the main reason. I always thought it was more glare from these kind of prints. I think it's a little of everything. I think it's cleaned down with school children. And they were sold to schools, thousands, hundreds of thousands were sold to schools. So it became a huge, huge business. It's still a huge business. Most of us are more American, or people around the world are very familiar with viewing. This is a view after this third model view after this Model C. The Model C came out in 1946. It's a fake light. It's a very durable viewer. And they made stereo images, 7 images on a reel. There's this is what they look like. I'm surprised you're with me, but nearly everybody has had one at some point. There's your aired images, and you'd have 7 images on film. So there's 14 pieces. They're called chips. Those are images. Man who invented this, his last name is Gruber. He was a organ piano tuner in Portland, Oregon, and we came up with this idea. He was also an amateur photographer, stereophotographer, came up with this method of mounting the slides the cat with. In 1938, 1939, he sold the rights to a company called Sawyer's, who were a major postcard producer, and they took them to the 1939 World's Fair in New York City, and it was a huge, huge success. And within a year or so, they were selling hundreds of thousands, and by the 1950s, they were selling millions and millions of remastered reels. They sort of have no knowledge of how many they actually may have changed hands, and every time they change hands, the records go disappear. So we're probably well into the billions of reels that they produce today. The company today is owned by the Tell Corporation, and it's part of the Fisher-Price division. And that unfortunately puts it into preschool, into the preschool area. So, and they made, by the early 1950s, they came out with what they call three reel packets, 3-reel, and like this packet here sold in the 1980s for sold for $1.50 retail. They sell these all over the world. They make them in different languages. This one here is in German. It's the German packet, produced in Belgium. And this is a packet never been opened. It's got the original cello wrap. This is the way they eventually ended up with this method. And then in 1981, they changed ownership for the first time. Second time. they taken over by GAF in the late 60s, and then they became part of what's called Viewmaster International. And they, their biggest customer at that time was the Toys R Us company. And they didn't like this type of packaging, it wasn't helpful, so they created what are called a hanging card. They're hanging cards. So they have the 3 real hanging cards that you find, and that's basically stereo. So that gives you an idea of a little overview of stereo, and I'll be glad to answer any of your questions. And I'm going to show you, okay, real quick, I'll take a question.
Just most valuable stereo card.
The most valuable stereo card. Most valuable in terms of what sale goes, actual sale. There's a stereo daguerreotype of the nude that I know sold for somewhere between $70,000 to $75,000, depending on the sold in Europe. So the exchange rate is like $72,000. That's the most expensive stereoscopic. The most expensive single card, I mean, it's probably somewhere in the $5,000 to $10,000 range. They do change hands every day in 4 figures. So the most desired American stereo view is what's called the joining of the rails, which is the 2 locomotives together. You see it in all the books. Okay, that's a half a stereo. You see that picture? It's a half a stereo. So that image has sold anywhere, depending on the condition. I know of one absolutely minimum one that sold for $10,000.
What about the ones that you found earlier in Europe?
Langenheim, like I sold many years ago when I lost my job in 1981, I sold those, I think I sold them for about $100 cheap at that time. Those views today are probably $400 to $500.
I would like to ask you, for the home stores that was only on Tiger, everything else is so good.
Yeah.
Did people have yellow cases?
Good question. I've been asked that question, and I've talked to the doctors and stuff about it, and they said, yes, actually, we were smaller-minded or something. I don't know why our heads were smaller. No, but actually, they did make viewers. They did make viewers even narrower than what you're talking about for like children. They're still small ones. But the only company that made this size was Keystone. They made the white viewers. They started making these about 1930, 31. They made them up until, they actually made them until 1973. Just don't manufacture. They stopped making the stereo views in 64. They stayed in business making the sets of optical viewers for when you get your driver's license, the drive tests. And they also made them for a lot of them for schools, the eye testing for schools. And the collection of glass negatives is now at the University of California, Riverside, Keystone Management.
And can you compare the theory on why the tops of the images of many stereo cards are in arch shape?
Oh, we don't know exactly when that started, but they started doing it pretty early. There's some very early images, 1854, 1855 images, which have that top. One of the theories is, and I tend to agree with this, is that you get this, you get the type of lenses they use in those cameras. You get the shadowing at the corners. Okay, you get the shadowing at the corners. What's that?
Vignetting.
Yeah. But there's another name for it too. So alligatoring or something like that. Anyway, but you're right. It's those early lenses from those stereo cameras. When you print them, you're going to get a darkening at the corners. So that eliminated that and just cut off the bottom. Dome print. The dome print sort of became standardized. A man named Bergner patented a 1958 patented a Bergner cutter. The Bergner cutter was the cutter with a die cut cutter that they used in that. So they all paint steam from standard size.
Are the two lenses identical, or is there a range?
They're slightly slanted because your eyes don't focus straight ahead. You actually toe in slightly. So they're a wedge shape and they toe in.
Yeah, wedge.
So here they are. You can see this.
Yeah,
And they toe in. Can you see that? You see how they toe in?
But they're interchangeable.
You can flip it over there. It has to be cut from the same magnify, the same length. It has to be cut from the same length. If you take this, if I take this out, as long as these other digits, it's going to get an aberration. Very rarely does it work. Yeah. So, because I bought viewers early on, I used to buy viewers. That's all I wanted to out of school, but something. So then it's info. I think it's following. So you can't do that. You see, Dummy, we had a good rapport. But first time I went to see him, I was a pretty novice collector. In fact, I had just bought that viewer. I bought it at the Boston Photo Show. It was the first Jerusalem viewer I had. I went in, he invited me out to his house. Does anybody know who Paul Wing is? Okay, Paul Wing is the godfather of area of the photos. Changer, like, also tremendous stereographer. PSA, and won all. Anyway, I went to his house here in Boston, and I said, come on downstairs. I went downstairs, and he had one of the big wardrobes, doors open like this, and he had converted it, had shelving, okay? And I don't know how many shelves, 8 or 9 shelves. He opened this thing up, completely full, front to back, left to right, full of shoes. I mean, just totally outclassed. But it's just, he collected from the 1930s farm. He bought it for $5 his hour. Long time ago. So he's gone now, but it's legendary. I'll tell you one quick story about Paul Ming. He the Depression in the 30s, he didn't have any money at all. He just barely got by. And then when the war came, he worked in 4 industries, and he always had some kind of part-time job. He went to a camera store in 1946 and bought a realist viewer. He wrote to the realist company, can I sell these door to door? And they said, well, okay. So you would carry a realist viewer with it everywhere. And the legendary story is, he got on an elevator in Boston with a guy. He always had a viewer. He always had a stereo camera, and he would always shove it in the guy's face. And by the first floor, the guy's looking at the views. By the 28th floor, the guy had already bought his outfit, all set. Yeah. So. One more story up there, and then we're going to see the slide. There's a fellow named Dave Huggle who lives in Columbus, Ohio. Back in 1980 something, he got into stereo, didn't know anything about it, and he called me up on the phone. I said, I hear you from West Studio. What's the best camera? I said, well, probably the stereo. Well, where'd I get those? I said, well, the guys telling me Shutter Club. I said, okay. So the next day he was going to work, and he saw there was a garage sale. He stopped at a garage sale, went into the garage sale, and they had a realist camera on the table. Now, we didn't know anything about realist cameras. It happened to be a 2.8. You know what a realist camera is? It's a premium camera. So it picks up with this camera. It's a 2.8. Looks like the thing. Probably never had a cell phone. I mean, it's like a beautiful thing with their case camera. And a flash and a blow. So he says, how much is this thing? And he says, $25 for the whole lot. And he says, sure. So he gives her $25, takes the camera, she's walking away, she says, well, don't you want the projector too? The story doesn't end. It's a stereo picture. It's a realist stereo, right? Which is one of the hardest. Takes it to work, tells everybody at work about his camera gun. One of the guys at work said, hey, by the way, did you know that McAllister's camera is having a tent sale today? And I think I saw a stereo camera for sale. Now, they opened it like 9 in the morning. This is like about, he couldn't go into his lunch hour. So at lunch hour, he goes over to McAllister's camera, which is about 10 blocks from where he works. He walks into the store. They're having the big tent sale. He goes over, and here is a stereo macro camera. This all in the same day. A stereo macro camera and all the outfit to go with all the accessories. Realist stereo macro outfit. Mint in the box with the original price on it. They had bought it for some, somebody had ordered it back in 1958, and here it was still sitting there in 1980, and they're getting rid of all this junk out of the bathroom. And find somebody to help him. He said, how much is it? I said, what's it marked? He said, looks like it's worth between $200. So I said, how about $50 for the whole lot? That includes all these accessories. Oh yeah, we don't want the accessories. Yeah, take the whole thing, $50. So for $75, it doesn't end here. Big Trouble now has the most expensive, rarest of the realist cameras, and the projector, everything. He has a wow. So he gets back to work, and it was at the time that Jimmy Carter was running for Jimmy Carter and Reagan were running for president, whatever year it was. So that's how you predict this stuff. He finds out that the next day, Reagan is going to be speaking at the State House, and it's his day off. So he goes down with this brand new 2.8 with his first roll of film. Now, he's never shot a stereo view ever before. All right? With his 2.8, he's got his new roll of 35 millimeter film in there, a little length through there. His score pound drop is like looking at it all upside down and everything. He gets down there and he's a big crowd gathered. He says, well, Reagan's inside the State House, he'll be out in half an hour or so. So he's standing there and this Secret Service guy walks in, a black suit, glasses, and like, what you doing? Stand here waiting for Reagan's. What's that? It's a stereo. Really? A stereo? Well, you want to see one of those? Of course. You're allowed. Kind of do this, you see, put the little hood open, you know, and it's one. It takes a sweetie picture. Yeah, just have me pass her across a kid. Oh, yeah. I says, where do you get these? He says, oh, I bought it at a camera store. Oh, really? They're kind of hard to find. You get them, we place about shutter bugs, you can order on. Oh, he knows they're not. So the guy says, he said, you here to photograph Reagan? I said, yeah. He said, hey, you stand right here, and I'll Reagan right to you. That guy's name is his job, right? So here comes Reagan down the steps of the State House. Here's Dave Huddle with his. Now he knows he's only going to get one shot, right? He's got his stereo camera. He flips it. Oh man, I hope I got the step right. It's looking like this. And said, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm standing there, and Reagan comes up and gets closer and closer and closer. And the guy's walking ahead and pushes the crowd. Reagan's going like this, and he comes right up to him. He's practically on top of him. Takes the picture. He steps outside, puts aside the whole blue coat light. So he called me on the phone. Long blue light. What? They got stereo around Reagan. Oh shit. I said, I want a copy of it. He says, okay. I said, how's it turn out? Well, I don't know. I just took it today. He said, I've got some other pictures to make yet, and then I'll take it down and get it across. Well, shoot, it's piece of crap. You get Okay, so the rest of the day he was taking pictures. He had his flash, and flash ball stuff in the old. I mean, he's great. So he gets his film process, calls me on the phone, and says, unbelievable. This is unbelievable. You got to see this. So you're going to see this slide. He produced, I told him, you need to make a single print. I said, I want to print it. I think he made 10 sets, 10 cards. You'll see it tonight in stereo projection. And it's a knockout. I have either number 2, I think I have number 3, either all the way. Ronald Reagan has number 1. The Reagan line. He copied, well, you should copy it. It's the way I copy it. You just copy it again, and then you photograph it. You have to work at it. You have to practice. There's dozens and dozens of, well, the Stereo Club of Southern California was called the Hollywood Stereo Club. John Wayne, major member, Robert Stass, Carol Heston, who just died. Reagan, they know they have the whole membership. In fact, they have, Susan Pinsky has a copy of their early, they used to sign in like, it's just like this. They would come and they would meet once a month. And they would come and, I know Arlene Dahl was a member, Art Linkletter was a member.
Seal Ball, they had to do it.
They probably would.
That's Harold Lloyd.
Harold Lloyd was president. And he was.
What about Eisenhower?
Eisenhower wasn't in the Hollywood Stereo Club, but he was a stereo photographer. And he did a lot of stereo after World War, after 45. He was in, he was head of natives and made a lot of stuff out of yeah, he did a lot of stuff. So there's a lot of famous people that have stereo. Okay, let me show you some slides real quick.
Everybody have glasses? Everybody needs to see their glasses?
I do.
They all?
But this one's.
When I say what do we collect, it's my wife Janet and I, this is our collection. Okay. My wife Janet collects dolls and toys and children's things, and so this is one of her favorite views, the little girl and cat, the display of things, all things that she's interested in, the dog, so fans and the doll and little girl.
What year?
This was done, I think, about 1875. That's a nice early yeah. This is the Santa Claus. We also collect Christmas stuff. We still have our Christmas tree up. It stays up year round. And we just changed decorations occasionally. And this is our favorite view of Santa Claus. This was done by Keystone about 1897. The earliest stereo view that I know of, it shows a stereo photographer at work in Ohio. Now I collect from Ohio, so my collection is really dominantly Ohio. I'm interested really in Wall Street. I had to reach the point when I was collecting that I had to stop collecting everything under the sun, so I started selling the stuff. So I really concentrated on Ohio. This was taken in 1857, and it's the flood near Zanesville, Ohio. There's a photographer at work. And the photographer's name is Ross. The president is Ross. He's also a daguerreotype. This is the Ronald Reagan view. This is number 3. And this is the view that John David Huddle took in 1980.
Wow.
Not too bad. 2.8. And back there is the Secret Service. Hopefully they do. I like the work of a lot of photographers. I collect modern stereo photographers' work. This is by Mike Chikaris, and this is Charlie Bradshaw, and this is the first verse. He did phenomenal work. He was a professional photographer and for the newspaper in Pittsburgh, and he photographed in the stereo, photographed for the newspaper. And I asked him, I said, "Do you ever take any stereos of it?" I knew he was a stereo photographer. I never thought to do it. So he would set up his pair of Nikons and he'd get these kind of shots. And so I asked him to send me a copy of this one. I love this shot. It's got such great action. See all the way across the field.
Terry Bradshaw?
Yeah, is that Terry Bradshaw?
Terry.
Terry, that's what I said.
See, Charlie.
Oh, no, you're right. Terry's. I used to work with that. All right, it's Terry.
It's all right.
He doesn't have me here.
Not anymore.
This is in Cleveland, Ohio, and this is at the headwaters of the Cuyahoga River, and this is where the canal ended. And these are the canal boats, still in use about 1878. And this is all the steamships coming into Cleveland. This is the down in downtown Cleveland. This is the Perry Monument. I just like this view. It just has a nice character about it. This is downtown, right in the center of Cleveland. Where we're looking at. This is probably about 8. This is out in Cuyahoga Falls, which is near Columbus. This is a stereo stand where they sold stereoscopes and views. If you look up the little child sitting there, you can see the stereoscopes lined up on the counter there. Then over to the left, you see the sample of some of the views that they offered for sale at the silver stand. Now this is also a very early view. This is taken probably about 1859. I just love this view. It just has such a nice look to it. And this is the little boy finding out his new sailboat and port trough. And because of the long exposure, the child and being held were moving together. This is one of the cortiscope views, and the man who made the views was Albert K. Hibbert. Just recently, we actually found a photo of him, but it's not in stereo. This is a shadow. This is, what do you call these, Dave, in your exhibit? We had a name for these guys. The shadow makers or something?
Something like that.
Yeah, this is a shadow maker. This is a stereo photographer at work. And that was a Parrott tractor, which is a very rare tractor today. This is another one of the coroscopes. As you can see, it says American Type Commerce Company, Jersey City, New Jersey. Nearly all of these companies are gone now. But this is showing how they operate their business, and they would take these around and see, this is, in order your type from us, this is where we make it. We're a quality company where we can deliver. Another coroscope. This is a virtually chandelier manufacturing company in Chicago. And they're men at work. Now what they would do, they would shut down, for the photographer, they shut down all the belts and everything. So normally those belts would, you see them with it lying around. So these are staged, so you can see the belts on the boat. This is one I'm taking here in Detroit. This is the Atlas dental X-ray machine, manufactured in Detroit in 1915. And I'm sure every patient died from cancer. But I contacted University of Michigan. They believe this is the earliest known photograph of a X-ray machine actually in use. This is really early for dental X-ray. I first saw this view. I had this thing to show you a stereo viewer. I'll tell you now. This is the Hudson Motor Car Company. This is also a coroscope. This is also from Detroit. And what was great about this is that the Hudson Company in 1915, they were trying to sell to women. It was believed that women couldn't drive a car. So they really wanted to sell these to women. Women would be the big buyers. They knew that women had a lot of influence on their husbands. And obviously worked because they stayed in business for a long time. So they made all the views they have women at the wheel. No men are in this series at all. And there's the interior of one of the cars, the lady at the wheel with her hat and a whole business, and shows how deluxe the cars were at that time. They were, in other words, any woman could drive it. So that's Hudson Motor Car Company. I love the stereo. It's great. This is one of the various famous people views where everybody got photographed. This is President Grant and his wife to his right, the left part of the picture. And this is up at Mount Washington. He went to Mount Washington, New Hampshire. He actually made a national tour on all of the country. And being born in Ohio, he qualifies for my collection. This is the earliest known stereo view of James A. Garfield. James A. Garfield is standing next to his mother to his right, and that's him with a high light-colored beaver hat. And this was taken before he was president. He only was president for a few months when he was shot, and he lived a few more months and he died. So he died, he was less than a year as president. Chester A. Arthur being president. So we had a very short time.
What was the occasion that they took this picture?
This is taken at his father-in-law's home in Hiram, Ohio. And that's his father-in-law at the black hat.
Was it somebody's birthday? I mean, why was the photographer dragged out there? She was hysterical.
He was already well known. This was probably taken him while he was running for president. This was probably taken in 1880 while he was running for president. No, he was photographed a lot, but not in stereo. It's just the local stereo photographers used every opportunity to photograph local things that were happening.
So this was a glass plate.
Originally it was glass, all these were glass negatives.
And then printed out.
And then printed on LCD.
So the negatives, are they, you ever run into
The
those?
negatives are very, I have those up there. A large number of negatives that destroyed, if it's wrong. I have maybe 100 glass stereo negatives, various places. A lot of amateur stuff. Amateurs started making this in the 70s. So this is William Howard Taft and his family. This was taken actually down in Augusta, Georgia. They had a home there. Okay. And this is President Warren G. Harding, his wife, and that's taken at the home in Marion, Ohio. Every president from Lincoln to President Hyman built that stick. Now I'm NSA members, their job is to sort of that. There's somebody out here right now goes in. They don't really know about it. Somebody's going to win, so they're going to, we have stereo. It'll be published in Stereo World. This is taken, it's the Hollenbach Circus, which was, for a while, had a show in Cleveland, Ohio. This is the elephant tamer. And the elephant is laid down in this scene of the elephant. This was a major attraction in Cleveland for a number of years. They then ended up going to Atlanta to the Cotton States Exposition, and they had a big fire there and destroyed most of the circus. This is one of the best locomotive views. The photograph railroad history is well documented in stereo. This is a early diamond stack locomotive. This is taken right near Akron, not far from Fry. Probably about 1870. This is the Great Dayton, Ohio flood. It was the Great Ohio Flood in 1913. You see a lot of postcards of this flood, but the stereo views are fairly scarce. This shows a dead horse in the street. It was pretty devastating, and that flooded Dayton isn't as bad as Katrina would have been for these people because they lost everything. The water was up, halfway up the light cross there. This is an interesting series of views. I'm only going to show a few of them. It's a whole set. We're trying to complete this set for years. This is the Great Whiskey Crusade. It was in Mount Vernon, Ohio, and the Women's Temperance Movement. This was their first major attempt to stop the whiskey trade. And they picked Mount Vernon because it's right next to Kenyon College, and college students can come into town and drink. And also, it was a major stop on the railroad. They had a railroad repair shop there, and a lot of railroad workers lived in Mount Vernon. So every business in town sold whiskey or some kind of alcoholic beverages. And this is it's called the beginning of the crusade. And the women came from a town called Hillsboro, and where the women temperance movement started, and came to pick Mount Vernon in 1872. They came to this town, and it was in December, and they took over the town. The ladies took over the town. Okay. Camped out in front of all the businesses, and they would not allow anybody to go in. These ladies, they call them the prayer ladies. They would sit and pray 24 hours a day, and then they would be relieved. I love this one because of the cigar story. So they would sit in front of the buildings and prevent anybody from drinking. Okay. This went on into January. It got very cold. So they built these little shanties that they would sit in because it was so cold. And there's the three of the ladies. This now became prayer booths. And again, they would take turns sitting in the built-in prayer booths. And you see they have little handles on them. Move them from one business to another. They had the business shut down because they were going out of the group. They having a customer. They moved to another door and shut it down. Shut down the town, basically. Okay, then. Finally, the men in the town they couldn't stand it. So they had a protest, and all the men went to the street, and they had this big protest rally to try to get the women out of the town. And this is a view of the men's protest. A lot of happy, sober guys. Okay. And finally, the snows came. It was February in Ohio, and you know how it is. And the snows came, and the ladies finally kind of gave in. But actually, they did shut down a lot of business. They made a lot of national publicity. Women's temperance union, and they're still in business today. And it's still a major force. This is another one of their genius ideas. This is in Westerville, Ohio. In Westerville, there was a man who decided he was going to serve liquor on Westerville, which is completely dry. And it's where Otterbein College was right near Columbus. And Columbus was one of the largest manufacturers of beer at the time. So he went into Columbus, he got a wagon of beer, he was going to set up a bar in the basement of his house, like a speakeasy. This is about 1873, right after Mount Vernon. Well, the ladies decided they weren't going to have any part of that, so they set dynamite charges under the house, and they blew the house off its foundation, and they blew out the windows in half the business places in downtown Berkeley. But they did make their point. The town is still dry today. This is an interesting series, actually done by a photographer named R.H. Lyman, who was from Toledo, so he qualified even though it was published in Rochester, New York. And this is the earliest that I know of microscopic stereo. And they did a whole series of these. This is the card and this is the stereo. This was very difficult to do. This was probably in the 1870s. Stereo microscopy. That's used all the time now and then. I like this view. This is a view by an Ohio photographer. There's a company that makes wagons and carts and different things. And they built this special organ wagon for the Estate company, which is a major maker of pump organs. And they built this special wagon and it was shipped up to Vermont, where this company is located. And the wagon has disappeared. Unfortunately, I traced it, and sometime in the 1930s or 40s, it was sent off to parades in place and never returned. They used it in parades for years, and it was built about 1870. And these are the children of the wagon. This is from the St. Louis World's Fair series. It's done by the Whiting brothers in Cincinnati. I really like their series because they photographed a lot of the circus acts and unusual events on the Midway. And this was an acrobatic theme. They had elephant rides, they had all kinds of camel rides. It was a phenomenal fair, 1904, 1905. This is the camel ride. There's a lady getting ready to go on the camel ride. This thing goes 1904. And this is the Indians. They had a large group of Indians come for the 1904 World's Fair. It was Geronimo was there. There was Geronimo was the city. It might be city. All the major tribes were represented. It's 750 Indians, it says on the poster. Well, one thing about the Indians, they didn't like to get themselves photographed. So this Indian here has turned a mirror on the photographer. So that's why we. This is my favorite fire engine view. This is taken in Cleveland about 1870, and this is one of the fire pumper groups. This is by Thomas E. Sweeney. Really helps that. Helps Shandy very. And this is the 1870 photographer's exhibition in Cleveland, Ohio. It was the first major exhibition. There was 3 conventions. The first one was in 1868, then 1869, and 1870. They all came to Cleveland, and in this view is everybody who is anybody. Yeah. William Henry Jackson's in this view. We have Southworth of Southworth and Hawes is in this picture. We have every major photographer really attended this event. And the photographer in the foreground, his name is North, North, and he this is also by Sweeney, and he also made a full format. You can see the large camera, and that's him getting ready to put. You can see the plate here. He's getting ready to put the plate in. It has blurred.
Can you tell which is Jackson?
No, I just don't use it. There's several people that sort of look like him in there, but I'm not sure. I don't want to say, but he was there. This is the interior of the 1870 exhibition. You can see the E&H Anthony Company, which I talked about. They were the largest producers of photographic equipment and supplies. And all the major photographers were at this event. It was. I want to have the time machine that takes me back to that. Okay. And this is, I have a lot of lighter than air stuff because I'm from Akron, Ohio. This is the beginning of 1912 U.S. race, balloon race in San Antonio, Texas, and this is the Goodyear board. I have a lot of Goodyear stuff. in my collection. My father worked for Goodyear. This is the Goodyear blimp at the 1933 World's Fair in Chicago. Century of Honor. This man concludes, I think this is concluded. Thank you.